She was thrown away, cast into the wreckage of a forgotten world, labeled obsolete, unwanted, but one man saw past the rust, past the silence, and brought her into the light. It began on a ghost station that hadn't seen life in decades. The orbital structure, once a vital link in the ArcNet trade system under the now fallen Scylla Union, floated abandoned above Dalara's dead satellite. Long ago, Cast Viral Station had thrived with traffic and purpose. Now it was nothing but a skeleton drifting aimlessly in the dark, cracked hulls, disconnected sectors, solar panels hanging like snapped wings. It had become a graveyard, no gravity in places, no energy draw, no signals of movement, no lights, no warnings. Only the hum of silence, and now and then, a scavenger bold enough to dive into the void, hoping to pull out something valuable before the next raider crew beat them to it. Within the dim lower ring of the docking section, the sound of footsteps echoed off metal, echoes of footsteps where there should have been nothing. One man, one light. Jace Trennan moved steadily through the station corridor, gloved hand hovering near the edge of his sidearm, torch clipped to his shoulder, casting wide beams over shattered panels. His breath hissed softly inside a scratched helmet, the internal display blinking red warnings. Toxic atmosphere, fractured carbon seals. Unbreathable, he didn't remove his helmet. Jace had been a salvage tech before the wars took everything. Born in one of the outer settlements, trained on hydrogrids, lived through more than his share of near deaths. When the solar factions collapsed, he stopped trying to belong anywhere. He shifted between ships, hauling wrecked goods from the void for whoever paid best. Today, he was on a freelance trace run, a transmission old, encrypted, and nearly extinct, had started flickering along an old government frequency. He picked it up during a run-through near derelict comm beacons, a code signature from the Union's old days. No active rescue calls, just a low, broken loop from a station that was supposed to be lifeless. The job wasn't about saving anyone. His client just wanted to know if the signal could be isolated, but something about it kept tugging at him the deeper he moved through the corridors. So far, he'd seen no cuts on the walls, no tool marks, no signs of recent scavenging. In a place like this, untouched stations didn't last long. Something felt wrong, like it wasn't just abandoned, like someone wanted it forgotten. He reached a mangled access shaft, sublevel 6. The elevator unit was rusted through, pulleys snapped, power controls melted like plastic. Jace climbed down manually, boots scraping hard metal rungs. The tunnel opened into a ruined corridor scorched from some blast. Twisted piping lined the walls, light fixtures dangled like snapped jaws. He moved slowly, then something caught his beam, a shimmer of color, movement, no just fabric gently shifting under the breeze from a broken ventilation duct. He advanced, cautious. In the far curve of the corridor, nearly hidden under a collapsed ceiling panel and layers of dust, was a shape. Human-shaped, crumpled, curled in on itself. He came closer, heart slowing, expecting remains, but then he saw the faint rise and fall of breath. Alive, skin-tinted pale emerald, not bruised, but her true coloring, hair matted, long, silver-like wire gone dull. Her garments, if they could be called that, were torn strips of translucent polythread and layered fabric, the kind worn by ceremonial aides decades ago. Traditional, once pristine, now torn, ruined, she looked like something once honored, left to rot. Jace lowered his scanner. No active readings, but the body was warm, weak pulse, still there. He swallowed. This wasn't why he came. Kneeling low, he pushed away the rubble crowded around her, careful not to startle her fragile form. Her shoulder was thin, the skin drawn tight across bone. With care, he reached a gloved hand beneath her chin, tilted her slightly. Her eyes fluttered open, barely, shards of violet, bright with confusion, glazed with fear. Zarian, he realized. One of them, noble bloodlines, had eye patterns like that. Rare. Her mouth moved like she was trying to speak, but no sound came out. Her lips were cracked. Her hands twitched, one barely pushing against the floor like she'd try to run if she could. It wasn't much of a movement, but it said everything. She was trying to survive. Jace unfastened his outer thermal cloak, wrapped it carefully around her upper body, shielding what he could. When it touched her, she flinched as though she couldn't remember what warmth felt like. He saw her eyes shift again, landing on him. Not fully focused, but enough. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said through his comms, tone low and steady. "You're safe." She didn't answer. Her eyes stayed on his visor. She didn't have the strength to do anything more. Jace moved fast now, but gentle. Pulled an injector from his kit, low stimulant, just enough to keep her responsive. He pressed it to her thigh. She didn't resist. His breath fogged the helmet as he exhaled. His hands weren't shaking from fear, but from something deeper. This wasn't a salvage job anymore. This was a person, someone meant to be left behind, someone who hadn't died when everyone else did. He tapped his comm unit, trying to raise his ship. Dead static, the walls were too thick. He'd have to carry her. Tightening the coat around her shoulders, he lifted her into his arms. She was featherlight, too light. Her skin was like metal left out in the cold, and her head rested against his chest without resistance. She tried to breathe words again, nothing came out. Just the sound of air passing through tired lungs. One hand, barely strong enough to move, pressed gently against his chest plate. Reflex, instinct, trust. He didn't wait to study it. He turned back toward the access shaft, scanning for the safest way out. Salvage ship Velinus, hold 2, improvised medbay. He laid her down gently on the makeshift bed, old polymatris creaking under her weight. His ship's systems buzzed around them, outdated, patched together but still alive. The dim yellow light cast gentle shadows over her sunken features. Jace removed his helmet, the stale pressurized air hissing softly as it equalized. He exhaled and wiped at his brow with the back of a bare hand. Then filled a small flask with warm water, knelt beside her and tipped it to her lips. She stirred enough to drink. Her throat moved slowly, each swallow-like effort written across her face. One trembling hand pulled the edge of the blanket up around her. Her voice, a dry, broken sound, spilled out like dust. "Why," she whispered, "Jace didn't look away. Because you were alive, that was enough for me." "You don't know who I am?" "No," he replied. "I don't need to. I was thrown out, left behind." He nodded, not to agree, but to tell her he heard the truth in her voice. "I don't care," he said. "You shouldn't have been." Her head turned away, her body curling instinctively, as though trying to disappear again. Her eyes barely stayed open. He said nothing more. He didn't ask her name, didn't press for details. Silence, sometimes, is the kindest thing. Instead, Jace opened the supply drawer, pulled out protein packets, a woven heating pad, soft cloth. Sat beside her again. He cleaned the dirt and ash from her hands, wiped her face gently. She didn't speak again that night. She didn't need to. Something had already changed. She'd been discarded. He had found her, and somewhere deep between what was broken and what was still holding on, hope was alive again. Slow, careful motions. She watches from half-closed eyes. Distrust is there, but so is something else. A flicker, not hope, not yet, just surprise. Surprise that someone's hands are warm, gentle, not taking anything. Interior, Inaya's crew, quarters later. Kel sits alone at a side console. Voice recorder active, salvage log. Castiller outpost, day 1. Found a survivor, Zari female. Court markings faded, malnourished, no known ID. She's stable, weak but alive. I'll try to find food. She can digest a pause. She was left there, not hidden, just thrown away. He turns off the recorder, stares at the wall for a long time. Interior, Meb same time. Elena lies still. The name she hasn't spoken in years now feels like a whisper under her skin. Her body aches, her throat burns. But it's not the physical pain that breaks her. It's that someone picked her up and didn't ask her value. She turns her head and sees her old garments folded on a chair, worn, shredded, useless. She watches the man outside the room as he paces once, stops, checks his tools again. She doesn't understand him yet, but she knows this. He didn't strip her. He didn't sell her. He saw her fade to black. The salvager ship has drifted quietly in low orbit above Delura 9, its dull gray hull blending with the ruined sky. Inside, the low hum of life support systems was constant, a soft reminder of safety, artificial but reliable. Cal Renner stood alone at the cockpit viewport, eyes on the broken remains of the station. They just left. He hadn't slept. The station silence was still inside him. He hadn't planned on this. He was here for old tech, not survivors, not her. Behind him, the cabin door hissed open. He turned. Alina stood weakly at the threshold of the medbay. One hand braced against the frame. The thermal blanket was wrapped tightly around her body. Her silver-white hair still tangled, but no longer clumped with dust. Her legs trembled with the effort to stay upright, but she forced herself to stand. Cal moved toward her immediately, slow and careful. "You should be lying down." She looked up at him. Her voice was dry but steady. "I don't want to sleep any more." He reached to steady her. She didn't resist. "I ran a scan." He said, "You're severely undernourished. You probably haven't had proper food in weeks or longer. 17 days. She said that stopped him. She looked at him, her violet eyes steady. "I kept track. Every time the light changed in the ceiling above me. I counted. You were conscious most of it." She nodded faintly, long enough to hear the station go silent, long enough to know no one was coming. He guided her to the co-pilot's seat. She moved slowly, the blanket dragging over her bare legs. She sat carefully, adjusting the cloth around her shoulder. Kel didn't stare. He noticed, but he didn't make her feel watched. That difference mattered. She studied the control panels with quiet intensity. Her fingers trembled above the interface. "You understand Terran NAV systems?" he asked. "I understand more than you think." She looked at him directly now. "I used to fly ceremonial ships, Zalari diplomatic vessels. I watched Terran designs enter our ports and listened to the engineers whisper that your designs were crude but effective. You were a pilot. I was many things," she said, her voice quieter, "but that part of my life is gone." Kelvin Press, a moment passed in silence, then she turned slightly toward him. "You didn't ask my name." "I figured you'd tell me when you were ready." Another beat, then Alina. He nodded slowly. Cal, a pause. "You have questions," she said. "I do," then asked. He leaned back against the metal console, arms crossed. "What were you doing alone in a collapsed tunnel on a dead station?" She didn't answer right away. Her eyes dropped. She traced a faint scar along her wrist absently, as if remembering something far away. "I was discarded," she said. "Finally stripped of rank, declared obsolete. My body was past protocol expectations for high service." Her lip curled slightly. "They said I was no longer fit to represent the court." "That's the Zari for you," Cal muttered. "Ceremony over substance." "No," she said, surprising him. "They weren't always like that. Once our oaths meant something. Even beauty had purpose, but time eroded that. Tradition became politics. I became a reminder of what they no longer wanted to see." She looked at her hands, elegant but aged by hardship, "So they left me there." She said, "No guards, no ceremony, just the assumption I'd fade with the power systems." Cal remained silent for a moment. "Then I'm sorry." She shook her head. "You didn't do it. No, but someone should have come back for you." They didn't. The weight of it settled between them, the ache of being discarded, not because of what she did, but simply because she endured too long. Cal moved to the storage locker, pulled out a clean cloth wrap, less ceremonial, more practical, and returned to her. "This might fit better than the blanket," he said, holding it out. She looked at it, hesitant, then reached for it, fingers brushing his. "Thank you." She didn't flinch when his skin touched hers. A shift from before, Cal gave her space, turning to the NAV panel while she dressed. She changed slowly, wrapping the dark cloth across her chest, securing it with a tie at the waist. It clung loosely, but it covered more than the tattered ceremonial fabric ever did. When he looked again, she had pulled her hair back into a loose knot. He nodded with quiet respect. "Where are we headed now?" she asked. "I was going to hit the next salvage grid around Eno's belt." But now he looked at her seriously. "We may have trouble." "What kind of trouble?" "That distress beacon," he said. "The one pulsing from the station. It wasn't just old data. Someone reactivated it a few days ago." "Max," she frowned. "That signal was mine." Cal blinked. "You did that." She nodded. "There was a hidden terminal in the wall conduit. I wired it to a power backup using what I had. I only managed a few cycles before it burned out." "That signal went wide," Cal said grimly. "I thought it was salvage bait, but someone else might have thought it meant high-value cargo." She understood instantly. "They'll come," she said. Yes, she stood again, this time steadier. "We should move," she said. "I need to finish charging the drive coils." "Half hour, maybe less. I'll help." He looked at her, skeptical. "I may be half-starved," she said, "but I still remember how to operate fusion regulators." He handed her a diagnostic tool. She followed him to the maintenance bay without another word. Behind them, on a small auxiliary monitor, a faint red light blinked. "Incoming ping encrypted Zari origin." They weren't alone anymore. A faint chime echoed through the ship's cockpit. Short, precise, mechanical. Cal Renner turned his head toward the auxiliary monitor, just as the alert flashed red again. "Encrypted transmission detected. Source unknown. Classification. Zari military protocol." He stepped toward the console, fingers flying across the keys. Alenia, just behind him, saw the shift in his body language, the way his jaw set tighter, shoulders slightly tensed. "What is it?" she asked, moving closer. He didn't look at her. "Someone's pinging us. They're cloaking their signature, but the protocol matches what I remember from my border running days." Zari military comms, clean, surgical. "They're not saying hello." Alenia's expression hardened. "Court enforcers." Cal nodded. "Or assassins. Depends how badly they want to erase the past." "They do," she said flatly. "They always did." Cal cut the comm system's transmission feedback, effectively rendering in as a silent stone in orbit. "That'll buy us time, but not much. If they've already triangulated the beacon you activated, they're probably inbound." She turned to the main screen. "Can we run?" Cal pulled up the NAV chart. "Jump drives at 87%. We'll need 10 more minutes to clear the gravitational bleed from the station's wreckage." "If we fire early, the field could tear the hole." Alenia didn't hesitate. "Then we make them believe we're still dead." "No lights, no transmissions. Seal the heat vents." Cal raised an eyebrow. "You're good at this. I wasn't just a ceremonial consort." "Cal," she leaned over the panel, "I studied defense protocol. I knew one day the court might try to silence its own mistakes." Cal locked eyes with her for a moment. Not pity, not awe, just recognition. She wasn't just someone to protect. She had skills, training, a reason to survive. Together, they shut down all external signals. The ship went dark from the outside. Even the auxiliary thrusters cooled to black. From a distance, Aeneas was just another frozen rock drifting through vacuum. Inside it was tense and quiet. Cal moved to the weapons panel, limited, 2 short-range kinetic slugs. No shields, this wasn't a gunship. It was a scrap hauler with bolt-headed armor and patch circuits. If they were found, there'd be no fight, just escape or destruction. Alenia sat in the co-pilot chair, eyes locked on the starfield. Then she asked the question neither of them had voiced yet. "Why did you save me?" Kel exhaled slowly. "I didn't have a reason. Not the kind that makes sense. I just couldn't walk away." "Not from that." She looked at him carefully. "Do you always pick up what others throw away?" He met her gaze. "No, sometimes I leave things where they lie. But you weren't just broken. You were abandoned. That's different." She looked away. "Then what were you before this?" "Terran engineer. Station systems comm relays. Worked the outer colonies until the war." "Then I was a battlefield mechanic. Fixed engines while bullets flew. You survived barely. Lost a brother." "Lost a planet." Got tired of watching people rot while governments redrew maps. Alenia absorbed that in silence. Then her voice dropped. I watched my sisters die, one by one, in the name of elegance. We aged, that was the crime. He frowned. Your race discards its women when they grow older. They reassign us, sometimes to the temples, sometimes to lesser houses. I refused about Bo quietly, so they erased you. They tried. Another ping echoed faintly from the monitor. This time closer. They both snapped back to the panel. Cal traced the signal's trajectory. They've entered orbit. No transponder code, stealth configuration. That's a Zari interceptor. Light armor, fast burn. Is there only one? Alenia asked. For now, then we move now. Even if it risks a partial jump. Kel stared at the screen. The math wasn't good. A 90% drive charge was minimum for a clean phase transition. They were sitting at 88. It could shear us across dimensional edges, he muttered. We'll survive the jump, maybe, but the NAV grid could go blind. We might end up in empty space, no backup beacons. I've already died once, she said calmly. Let's not do it again, waiting for perfection. He hesitated, then nodded. He dropped into the pilot's seat and keyed the jump sequence. The engines throbbed low. Power surged. The ship began to vibrate. Alina braced herself against the console. Destination, Cal asked. She considered outskirts of Nema core. There's a half-dead-ad station still running black market ports. If we need repairs, fuel, or a place to vanish, it'll be there. He entered the coordinates. Outside the window, a flicker, something small, dark, and angular moving against the stars. The Zari interceptor, just breaking visual range. They see us, he said. Then jump now. The drive howled. The stars twisted. The Aenias vanished in a slip space, just as the interceptor fired its first pulse. Interior lights flickered violently, panel sparked, gravity cut for 3 seconds, then returned. Alenia gripped the chair with both hands, breathing hard but steady. Kay held the controls tight, scanning readouts, no hull breach, jump successful, barely. When the ship stabilized, Alina looked over. Her hair had fallen across her face in the turbulence. She pushed it back. You were right, she said quietly. It wasn't clean. He gave a half smile, but it worked. They sat in silence for a moment, the adrenaline still fading. Then Alina asked, Do you think they'll follow? Colleen back. They won't stop until they're sure you're dead. We're back in their hands. Then we stay moving. Yes, she reached toward the console again. I want to help. Don't make this a rescue story. Cal glanced at her. The way she sat now, back straight, voice firm, face calm. She wasn't the discarded woman he found on the floor of a station. She was someone choosing to live again. All right, he said, we're partners now. And in that moment, without ceremony, a new bond formed, not because of pity, not from need, but from mutual survival. The slipstream collapsed with a deep metallic groan, and in NAS burst back into normal space. The hole shuddered as the ship adjusted to real time physics again. Residual plasma streaking off its stern, the stars stabilized ahead. A derelict station spun slowly above a cracked, lifeless moon. Nema Core Outpost, once a civilian science hub, now a abandoned trade shelter turned black market waypoint. Cal stay the controls, no pursuit signal. Looks like we dropped off the grid. Elena leaned forward in her seat, eyes fixed on the spiraling structure. This place wasn't meant to survive. You can see it in the welds. It didn't survive, Cal muttered. It just refuses to die. He hailed the docking bay. The response was as expected, cold, automated, barely functioning. Welcome to Nema. Clearance code required, no credit, no dock, surveillance active. Cal flicked open a side panel, dug through a stash of data tags, and inserted one marked Juno contract. He keyed a short burst reply. The station paused, then the screen lit green. Access granted, Bay 4. The bay door opened with a grinding metallic moan. Callie eased the knee forward and into the lightless hangar. Once the seal's hiss closed behind them, he powered down the ship. Alina unstrapped and rose slowly, her body still regaining strength, but she moved with purpose now. The black cloth wrap she tied across her torso was covered by a salvaged field jacket, rough, practical, and stolen from Calpairs. It didn't fit her ceremonial grace, but she wore it like armor. As they descended the ram together, Alinia's eyes scanned everything. Ceiling vents, security drones, old cameras mounted on carbon scaffolding. Her movements are graceful but alert. She wasn't just watching, she was calculating. Cal noticed. "You've been here before," he said quietly. "Not this station," she replied, "but places like it, places where the laws are made by whoever has the most leverage and the fewest scruples." The hangar air was stale and metallic. Lights flickered above, casting everything in a jaundiced haze. Across the bay, a Resco trader ship was being offloaded by men with heavy gloves and short-range EMP rifles slung over their shoulders. They didn't look up, they didn't need to. In Nema Corps, you didn't ask questions. Cal led the way through the loading corridor into the station proper. Broken display panels painted over insignias, cracked advertisement holos flickering between languages. A bar, a mechanical surgery ward, a row of stalls selling patched-up ship modules and stolen ration packs. At least 2 surveillance orbs hovered high above, pretending not to record. A man approached as they entered the main concourse. Short, broad-chested, cybernetic jaw brace. His smile was too wide to be friendly. "Terran, right," the man said to Cal. "You look like someone carrying something valuable. We make trades here, you understand." Cal didn't slow. "I don't deal with middlemen." The man's smile twitched. "Everyone's a middleman on Nema, unless you brought your own army." Alina stepped forward unexpectedly. "He has me." The man looked at her, took in her face, her posture, her unusual tone, and faltered slightly, then gave a short, respectful nod and backed away. As they walked deeper into the station, Cal muttered, "You have a way of making people back off. They think I'm dangerous," she said. "I don't correct them." A few turns later, they reached the spot Cal remembered, a supply vendor known for dealing with off-their-ord travelers. He keyed a knock. The door opened. A woman, tall, wide-shouldered, scars on her arms, nodded at Cal Rainier. "It's been a while." "Thought you retired or got frozen." "Neither. I need fuel cells, food packs, and a scrubbed NAV core." The woman's eyes flicked to Alina. She cred. Alina didn't flinch. Cal answered, "She's with me. No bounty tags." "No, then I don't want to know." The trade was simple. No credits changed hands. Cal gave up a set of micro drives from a Yuva skimmer he'd salvaged last month. In exchange, they got what they needed, but as they exited the vendor's shop, Alina slowed, a flicker of violet in her peripheral vision. A shadow moving opposite the light. She froze. "Cal," she said softly, "someone's following us." He didn't question her. He just changed direction immediately, pulling her through a narrow alley behind the market corridor. Pipes hissed above them. Steam rose from a cracked vent. Footsteps behind, fast coordinated. 2, Alina said. "Maybe 3, Zalari," Cal asked. "Could be, or Mercs." He drew a sidearm, kept it low. They reached a maintenance access door. Cal slammed the override. It didn't open. Alina pushed forward, removed a small rod from her jacket, a micro-interface spike, and jammed it into the panel. The door hissed open. They ducked through and sealed it behind them. Inside, darkness, storage chamber, crates, abandoned maintenance drones. Alina leaned against a wall, breathing shallow, and she said out loud, "They found me. The court." Cal looked at her. "This isn't about honor," she said. "This is about secrets. I wasn't just discarded, Cal. I heard things. I knew of codes buried in the diplomatic AI. I knew ritual chants that could activate deep state commands." His eyes narrowed. "That's why they're after you. I thought I'd forgotten them, but when you pull me out of that tunnel, something returned." "What kind of chants?" She swallowed. "Triggers, embedded orders, back doors written in language, not code. And one of them, if spoken correctly, can shut down entire fleets. Kel stared at her. She nodded. I was never just ornamental. Outside, something slammed against the sealed hatch. They had minutes. We have to leave now, she said. Cal moved to the back of the room, yanked a panel from the wall, revealing a vertical shaft. This leads back to the ship. I can climb, I know. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time since rescuing her, he saw the full picture. She wasn't just a discarded consort. She was a former operator, a living key, and now the court wanted her buried permanently. He helped her up the shaft first, then climbed behind her. No more waiting. The escape was over. That was a race. The maintenance shaft echoed with each movement. Cal's boots clanged against old steel rungs as he climbed behind Alenia. The metal felt slick with condensation, but she didn't falter. She moved fast, steady, one hand after the other. He noticed again she was no frail survivor. Her coordination was sharp, precise muscle memory from a life she hadn't spoken of in full. They reached the access panel 2 decks above. Cal slid it open and peered into the corridor, clear. They moved fast, doubling back toward docking bay 4. The station's overhead lights flickered erratically, casting brief strobes over grimy walls and tired surveillance eyes. No sirens, no alarms, but it felt like the storm was just seconds behind them. Elena whispered as they ran, "They won't just send assassins this time." Cal grunted. What else would they send? She hesitated. Then something that doesn't ask questions he didn't press. Not yet. At the hangar, the Aenias waited like a loyal dog in the dark. As they sprinted toward the ramp, a voice rang out behind them. Stop. 2 figures at the far end of the bay, both armored in ceremonial black court, Voltari, the Zilari enforcers trained to erase what the Empire could not punish publicly. Fast, silent, no insignia, no names, Elena froze. Cal turned and fired first. One kinetic slug hit the lead Voltari square in the chest. The armor absorbed the shot but staggered him back. The second drew a sonic knife, thin, glowing, quiet. Cal didn't wait. He grabbed Elena by the arm and pulled her up the ramp. Shots ricocheted off the side plating. Inside, the ramp slammed shut. He jumped into the pilot seat and keyed the emergency lift. Elena dropped into the co-pilot chair without being told. Her fingers moved across the control surfaces like she'd been flying for years. Cal's voice was low, fast. I need a destination. She stared at the screen, thinking hard. There's a planet, she said, outer rim barely mapped. The Zilari once used it for deep sequence backup ritual storage core protocols. They called it Nitari Vault. You think they kept records there. They kept memory, not data. Vocal archives stored through reverence chants locked by intonation. My voice might still trigger it. Cal was already setting the coordinates. How do we know it still exists? We don't. That's enough for me. Behind them, the Voltari had forced the bay doors. The blast shield began to part. Alenia activated rear flare systems, burning out the sensor sweeps. Cal launched the Aenias into space. Moments later, as the interceptor fire painted streaks across their hull, the jump drive surged, space folded. They were gone. Inside the slipstream, everything felt heavier. Time stretched, the engine wed with a sick undertone, pushed beyond its tolerance again. Alenia sat quietly, staring at the void outside the viewport. The energy trails were mesmerizing, but her mind wasn't in the slipstream. She spoke, voice low. When I was 16, I stood in a high hall during a truth chant. There were 36 of us arranged in a spiral. We didn't speak for 8 hours. We listened, we breathed, we aligned, and when it was our turn to vocalize, we weren't singing. We were unlocking. Kay didn't speak, just listened. They called us memory keepers, but we weren't just keepers. We were key holders. The words weren't secret. The sound was. She looked over at him. That's what they want to destroy. Because of what you remember? No, because of what I might reactivate. She took a breath. If we reach Natari Vault, I might be able to reconstruct the chant. Use it to access the old system, get inside the protocols, learn what they buried, clean back. You're planning to fight them with their own weapon. It's not about revenge, she said. It's about ending the cycle. The court builds silence around its sins. If I can break that silence, if the truth becomes too loud to hide, they'll have to change. A soft alarm beeped. Jump complete in 30 seconds. Cal glanced at her. If we survive this, what do you want? Elena looked at him. Her voice was steady. I want to stop hiding. I want to choose what I wear, what I remember, who I stand with. He held her gaze, then the ship snapped back into real space. They were above a barren planet. No orbital traffic, no signals, just endless copper ridges and shadows stretching across its dead surface. The NAV beacon blinked faint, barely functioning. Cal squinted. You sure this is it? She nodded. I remember that ridge line. It's the place. They began descent. As the ship broke through the atmosphere, Cal muttered under his breath, I hope whatever's down there is worth what's coming for us. Elena watched the clouds thin around them. It is shaped the rock into jagged spires and niffied dunes. No signs of life, no structures, just heat distortions and ancient silence. Cal piloted carefully, keeping their approach low and masked. The ship's sensors struggled to find anything at first. No power signatures, no landing zones, but Elena didn't rely on tech. She stood behind his chair, eyes locked on the terrain. Her tone was exact. There at the base of that third ridge, see the twin shadows, that's the entrance. It's carved underground, no surface infrastructure, it's meant to be forgotten. Cal guided the ship to a stop on a flat outcropping of redstone. He killed the engines. Dust curled around the hull as the heat vents slowly cooled. For a moment, there was nothing but wind and waiting. Elena pulled on a reinforced flight jacket over her wrap. The long sleeves hung off her wrists, but she tightened them at the forearms. She tied her hair back tight. Every movement was deliberate. Cal strapped a sidearm to his hip. You're sure it's not just a tomb? She didn't look at him when she answered. It was never a tomb. It was a library made of echoes. They exited the ship on foot, walking into the blistering heat with filtered breathers. The planet had no atmosphere worth breathing. Each step kicked up red dust that clung to their boots and skin. At the base of the ridge, half hidden beneath a sand drift, was a narrow crevice natural to the eye. But when Elena stepped forward and hummed below, drawn-out tone, a series of faint blue glyphs ignited across the rocks. Cal stepped back, his hand instinctively going to his weapon. That wasn't tech, no, she replied. It's resonance. Zari construction pre-digital era. Every access point was locked with vocal algorithms. No passcodes, just voice. The stone split open with a deep mechanical groan, revealing a vertical tunnel carved into the rock. Smooth walls, no stairs, just a drop. Cal looked down, then looked at her. You go first. She nodded, stepped forward, and dropped. He followed. Inside, the air was still and cold. The walls pulsed faintly with blue lines. Old tech, older than any Terran system. As they descended, the light followed them, reacting to Elena's presence. Her voice had awoken something. The tunnel ended in a large circular chamber. Dust floated in heavy beams of blue light. Rows of stone columns ringed the space, each etched with layered glyphs and patterns. At the center was a pedestal made of black glass. Above it, a suspended orb, metallic, smooth, silent. Elena approached it slowly. Cal stayed at the edge of the room, scanning the corners. This is the core, he asked. No, this is the gate. She stood before the orb, took a breath, and spoke, not words, tones. The syllables she used had no translation, but they filled the air with vibration. The chamber responded. The orb dropped gently into her hands. At the same time, the stone columns flickered to life, projecting spectral images not of people, but of sounds made visible. Chants, conversations, arguments, decrees, all from different eras of the Zari Empire. echoes of moments preserved as waveform records. Alenia turned her face pale-awed. "This is everything," she said. "Not documents, not files, testimony." They stored confessions, trials, orders, even purges recorded by voice encoded in chant. This is the memory the court buried. She held the orb to her chest like something sacred, but something changed. The chamber temperature dropped suddenly. The blue lights dimmed. Cal raised his weapon. "What did you trigger?" Alina turned startled. "I don't know." A low metallic click echoed through the tunnel they came from. Then another and another. Not footsteps. Insectal. Kel moved to her side. "Something's in here with us." From the far shadows of the chamber, a shape emerged. Thin, tall, moving on jointed limbs that clicked with every motion. It looked like it was made of polished bone and rusted alloy with a long skull-like head and no eyes. "Just vents and heat sensors," Elena whispered. "It's a listener." "A what?" "A silence enforcer. They weren't soldiers. They were programs given bodies trained to detect forbidden phrases. If someone spoke the wrong chant, they executed without trial." Cal fired a shot. The slug hit the creature in the chest. It staggered but didn't fall. The thing emitted a scream, modulated, layered. The sound cut through Cal's earplug and dropped both of them to their knees. He gritted his teeth, fired again, this time at its head. The metal skull burst apart in a shower of sparks. It collapsed, but the tunnel echoed again. Multiple clicks. Cal pulled Alino up. "How many are there? I don't know. This place should have been deactivated. It shouldn't be awake." They ran up the spiral corridor, past more flickering glyphs, chased by the sound of bone and metal scraping stone. Alina clutched the orb to her chest. "If we lose this, we won't." As they neared the exit shaft, another listener dropped from the ceiling. Above them, its limbs unfolding mid-fall. Cal grabbed a support beam and swung upward, kicking it off balance. It hit the wall with a shriek. Alenia ducked under its reach and kept running. At the surface, they burst into sunlight. The Aeneas still waited inside the ship. Calced the ramp and activated reverse thrusters before even strapping in. The listeners reached the ridge just as the ship lifted off. One tried to leap, but the blast wave from the engines knocked it back into dust. They rose into orbit. Alina dropped into the co-pilot's seat, breathing hard. Her face was pale, but not from fear, from realization. "They didn't just want to erase me," she said. "They wanted to erase everything I could reactivate. The Empire's sins all archived here." Cal looked at her. "You have proof?" "Now, no," she corrected. "I am the proof." She held up the orb, and in the background, the ship's long-range sensors lit up. "New signal detected. Incoming fleet. Zari origin. Multiple ships. They're already here," Kel said. Ailing nodded. "Then we send the truth before they shut it down." He turned the ship toward deep space, toward Tanfringe channels. Blacknet relays and every pirate broadcast. Who would listen? The truth would go out. Even if they didn't make it out alive, the Aeneas soared through the upper orbit of Nethari, its engines running hot, whole panels vibrating under stress. Behind them, the vacuum shimmered. 3 Zalari warships dropped into local space. Their formation tight, signatures encrypted, intentions clear. Cal sat stiff in the pilot's chair, jaw locked. "We've got 2 minutes max before they're in firing range." Elena stood beside him, not sitting. The orb was cradled in her hands like it belonged to her body. She stared at the readouts, no emotion. "Just focus. We don't have to outrun them." Cal looked up at her. "We just have to get this out." She moved quickly, sat at the auxiliary terminal, and slid the orb into a magnetic reader. The system rejected it. Ancient code, unrecognized input. She adjusted the tone of her voice, whispered an ancient Zalari phrase, low, tonal, rhythmic. The orb pulsed once, and the interface unlocked. Screens across the console lit up. Audio spectrograms, vocal keys, compressed Chan-encoded data. The ship's systems protested under the sudden influx. Memory buffers spiked. Cooling systems kicked in. Cal glanced at the long-range array. "Our uplink is garbage. We need a relay." Alenia didn't hesitate. "Use the pirate net. It's the only thing fast and ugly enough to carry this." "You sure? They don't care where truth comes from. They only care that someone wants it buried." He rerouted the signal. A progress bar blinked to life, transmitting 0, 2%. They were already taking fire. A bright red lance of Energy flashed past the viewport. The shields flared, barely holding. Cal spun the ship. We can't sit still. If I move too far, we lose the stream. Keep us close, she said. Make them think we're trying to escape. Cal nodded, veering the Aeneas into a jagged course through low orbit, threading between atmospheric resistance and the planet's weak magnetosphere. Plasma streak across the hull. Alenia adjusted the vocal parameters. She was singing now, quiet, controlled. Her voice wasn't musical, but powerful, a tone that made the very structure of the ship respond. The orb synced completely. More files unlocked, testimonies, purge lists, secret war declarations, executions covered up by ceremony. Transmission 43%. They're jamming us, Cal said. Elena didn't stop. Then we have to break the jam. Oh, she looked him in the eyes. We used their protocol. Cal's fingers hesitated above the console. You mean, yes, I'm going to say the phrase. He opened his mouth about to object, but stopped. He saw the way she stood, the way her shoulders squared, how her voice never wavered. She had been building to this moment not for days but decades. Do it. She stepped to the center of the cockpit, stood tall, and took one steady breath. Then she spoke a sentence in a language older than Terran memory. The moment it left her lips, the lights on the console froze, the engines dimmed. The transmission surged across space. The 3 Zari warships flickered, not visibly, but at a systems level. Their AI cores tied to ancient protocols recognized the phrase as a critical override. From a verified court archivist, all 3 ships froze mid-pursuit. Their comms went dead. Their targeting arrays blinked out. Transmission 96%. Alenia collapsed to her knees, not from exhaustion, but from emotional recoil. That phrase, those sounds were never meant to be spoken again. Her chest heaved, her hands shook, not in weakness but in release. Cal moved to her, steadying her Bible. Shoulders, you okay? She nodded. I said goodbye to the version of me they made. The final packet left the ship. Transmission 100%, sent to 47 relays, status confirmed. Silence filled the ship, then Cal exhaled. It's out. A new ping sounded from the comm panel. Incoming, rebroadcasts. It was already being spread, ripped, duplicated, injected into systems, smuggled into feeds, hidden inside. Subversive poems, even bootleg holo ads. The truth had left its cage. Outside, the Zilari warships began to withdraw. Their systems had no defense against what had just happened. They couldn't delete the chant, couldn't trace the source. They had failed in their final task. Alina pulled herself to her feet. She looked different now, not younger, but whole. 3 days later, the Aeneas floated in the orbit of a quiet blue star. The ship had been patched, repainted. A new registry signature masked their ID. Cal stood in the galley, adjusting the power couplings on the food dispenser. He looked over his shoulder. Want tea or synth cough? Elena sat at the small bench, cross-legged, watching the stars. Tea, she said softly, but real leaves, not your processed stuff, he chuckled. Princess requests are getting bold. She smiled. I'm not a princess. He brought her the tea anyway. She took it gently, hands wrapping around the cup. Where do we go now? She asked. Wherever you want. Cal replied, we're not fugitives anymore, just a man and a woman on a rust bucket ship, and the truth, it's out there now, and you're not just the one who said it, you're the one who lived it. She looked at him. You never saw me as broken. I saw someone who survived. She leaned forward, resting her hand over his. I see you too, Cal, the man who didn't walk away, their eyes locked, no grand kiss, no speech, just a long, silent moment of mutual understanding. Outside, the stars passed slowly, and in every corner of the galaxy, someone whispered the chant that had once been forbidden. Because of her, because of him, because they chose to live. Sunlight poured through the canopy of the old greenhouse dome, nestled on the shoulder of a terraformed cliffside world called Izol. 4. A temperate, quiet planet tucked far from patrol routes, court influence or conflict. Morning mist rolled in from the tree-draped ravine below, gliding past the landing pad where the Aeneas sat in calm retirement. Hull no longer scorched, its frame now repainted a matte bronze gold. A small weather vane on its side spun lazily in the breeze. Cal Renner stood barefoot in the grass just outside. The dome's circular entrance, he held a ceramic mug between his hands, steam rising from it in slow curls. His face was relaxed, trim beard, hair finely washed and cut. A planer hugged his torso. Sleeves rolled up to the elbows. Sunlight glinted off the scar on his left temple, the only outward sign of everything he'd lived through. Inside the dome, Alenia moved among the green. Rows of vines, flowers, and edible plants had been carefully cultivated in old hydroponic trays that she had repurposed into something far more beautiful. Her black hair, no longer silver streak from malnutrition, had returned to its full white luster sheen tied back in a loose braid that reached down her back. She wore a long, soft gray wrapped tunic open at the shoulders, secured by wide bands around her waist. It wasn't ceremonial, it wasn't practical, it was just what she chose. It moved when she moved, and she moved slowly now, like someone savoring the rhythm of a life not under threat. As she trimmed leaves with small shears, she hummed faintly to herself, not a chant, not a protocol phrase, just a tune she'd invented yesterday, one she could forget and remake tomorrow. Her voice filled the space without commanding it. Kay stepped inside, setting the tea down on the table near the open window. Still experimenting, he asked. She turned toward him, smiling without pretense. It's an arrowsilly fruit vine supposed to be stubborn, but I think it just doesn't like being talked down to. He chuckled softly, sounds familiar. She walked over and leaned into his chest. Her head rested against his shoulder. He wrapped his arms around her without hesitation. They stood there like that for a long time, saying nothing, letting breath do the talking. Eventually, she pulled back slightly. You still have that look in your eyes, what looked like you're expecting someone to knock on the hatch and pull us back into the war. He hesitated, then nodded. Habit dies hard. She touched his face gently. There's no one left to knock. He believed her now. They sat on a stone bench together overlooking the valley. A pair of small gliders flitted through the sky in the distance. Local kids racing through the canyon winds. A portable comm unit sat beside them, unplugged. They didn't need to listen to the galaxy anymore. Do you miss the old ship runs? She asked. I miss the noise. Cal replied, but not the wait. She nodded slowly. We could go again someday, but not to run. To visit, to teach, he said, maybe even to repair. Her fingers slid over his hand and laced with his. And to plant, he turned to her, eyes searching. Were we now, Alenia? We were fugitives, survivors, witnesses. She tilted her head thoughtful, then answered plainly. Now we're two people who stopped being what the galaxy made us and started being who we chose to be. Kel looked out at the horizon. The sun was higher now. The shadows were short. The day was warm and without danger. They had made it not through power or violence or destiny, but through choice. Alenia stood. Come help me dig the roots for the second row. If we let them sit too long, they tangle like us. She raised an eyebrow. No, we straightened out. He smiled, stood, and followed her into the garden. For the first time in years, there was no clock ticking over their heads, no ship to run to, no lie to cover. The past had been witnessed, the truth had echoed, the empire had shifted, and on a cliffside in a quiet world with dirt under their nails and warmth on their skin, they grew something new together.